record it. And we will share the recording into the website, and you can have a check maybe tomorrow. Okay, feel free to post your question into the chat. So we go to the first one, the specification. So today we will mainly focus on this part because I know most of us didn't have time to have a look of this specification. So today we will just focus on this part and just figure this out, how to get started with the assignment and what should we do with the assignment. And today is week 5. We still have 5 weeks to do the assignment. So have plenty of time, but for most of us, maybe we need to spend more time on the programming basics from now. Let's have a look. We have 3 options to do the assignment, but I recommend you to do the Python one because most of the students will use Python. So if you have any trouble for the assignment, then it will be very easy to find the answer in the forum. And what do we need to have before we do the assignment? So I think most of us have already know how to use Python, right? Including what is data type, for example, the list and dictionary, and etc. And flow control, you should be able to use the for or if clauses. And the class is not mandatory, but it will be helpful if you know how to use the class. And the file input and output, we will use it because we are going to send the file and receive the file. And the logging will help us to write a log. It is a building library in Python. So if you have no idea what is this, maybe you can have a look. It's pretty easy. You will just spend 10 minutes to learn how to use it. And after this, we need to know how to do the socket programming. I think we have already know how to do it, right? Because in the we lab 2 to 4, we have already know how to write a client, how to write a server in the lab. So you can just refer to the code in the lab 2 to lab 4. And the last one is the hardest one, which is the multi-threading programming. But this one is not pretty hard in the assignment, to be honest, because we have already done it for you in the template code, and we can have a look of it later. So it should be pretty easy in this part, but it will be helpful if you know how to do the multi-threading programming. So I recommend you to have a look of the online tutorial for this one. And all in all this kind of stuff, you can find it in the specification, and the specification is the most important thing in the assignment. So let's just have a look of the assignment right now. Okay, I know it's pretty long and it takes time to read it, but let's just focus on the most important part. What should we do with this assignment? And what is the goal? What kind of stuff do we need to do the submission? at the end of the assignment. So you can just simply scroll down a little bit and come to here. You can see we need to have a sender and have a receiver that can communicate with each other. And we can scroll down a bit. Then you can see here are some specification of how to run the sender and receiver. So we are going to run this command to run the sender. And we are going to run another command in here to run the receiver. So as you can see here, we just need to run this command to run the receiver and sender and let them to send a file to each other. And we have some segment formats, so we don't need to care too much about it right now because it's the detail about how to implement it. It's not the important part for now. So we can just scroll down a bit. So in here, you can see here is the flow chart of the sender and receiver. So firstly, we have a file to send. So we need to send the file, txt file, from the sender side to the receiver side. So what should we do is we go through the STP protocol in the sender side, and the sender will use the UDP. Sorry, there is some lagging of my screen sharing. So I will just make it slower. Okay, so can you see the figure 2 right now? Okay, so we need to write two stuff. The first one called sender and the second one called receiver. And in the sender side, we need to go through the STP protocol, which have already described it in the previous part. So we don't worry too much about this one for now, but we just know that we have a protocol to handle this kind of file sending. And it will just handle the file and send the file through the UDP socket. Just be aware of that. We are using the UDP socket instead of TCP socket. So it's a bit challenging to use UDP socket because it's not reliable, right? So we will not know if our packets have successfully arrived at the receiver side or not. So that's the challenging part in the assignment. And we have to use the UDP one to receive the file. And in the receiver part, we have to use the receiver socket, the UDP socket, to receive the file. And then we need to send the acknowledgement back to the sender. So it's just like we are trying to use UDP socket to mimicking the TCP socket behavior. That's what we need to do. And finally, we will receive the all the packets for the file, txt file. Then we combine them together and save it into a txt file in the receiver side. So the idea is pretty simple. We just need to send the txt file based on the UDP socket. So it will not be a very hard one. But in the details, we have lots of things to do. Let's just have a look. And after this, you may want to have a check at the end of the file. In the marking policy. So in the marking policy, you can see how we will test your client and sender and receiver. So you can see that's how we run the file. So after you have done your receiver and sender, you just simply run this kind of command and see what is the output. And if you have the correct log and the file in the receiver side. Okay, that's the overview of the assignment. Now we know like what should we do at the end and what should we submit at the end. And now we can have a look of the programming design right now. So in the receiver side, we only need to serve one sender at a time, which means we don't need to handle a lot of sender at a single time. So we don't need to like save their IP address or their username and etc. So it will be pretty easy for the receiver side, unlike the HTTP server. And for the receiver, like we only receive the packet from UDP. So just like the sender, so we need to implement the flow control and checksum and retransmission, just like the TCP. And this is the hardest part, and that's the main logic for the sender and receiver. And let's use a graph to describe it. Okay, so in here, we just need to send the file, a TXT file from the sender side to receiver side. It will be very easy because we have already write the template for you, and we are going to try to run it right now. And you will see like how easy to do this one. And in the sender side, we already have two threads. The first one is the main thread, and the second one is the subthread. The main thread is using to send the packets, including the like content inside the file, and the subthread will listening about the acknowledgement from the receiver side. And let's have a look of how to run it. Okay, so I have already downloaded the template file. You can find it in the specification of the assignment. So it will be in here. Will be in here. Feel free to download it and try it. Just make it easy to get started. We already write the receiver and sender templates. So you can try to run it with the command Python 3 receiver, and it will tell you how to run the stuff, right? So just follow the instruction, Python 3 receiver.py, and we just need to specify what is the port for receiver. So we use this one, and the sender port, we specify another one. And the file we want to receive, then we just specify. And the FLP, RLP. So we don't worry too much about it right now, just specify as 0. And you will say, the sender is using the address to receive message, right? So we are currently running the receiver right now. And next step is to run the sender. So you just simply run it, and you will have some instruction to how to run the sender. In here, we need to specify the correct port number. In here, we need to specify the sender port number. So you can try a random number. Let's say this one. And what is the receiver port number? Then you need to specify this number. So the receiver is running on this port number, 10001. So we need to specify the correct port number here, 10001. And the receiver port, we already specified it. And the file test.txt. And max window, we don't care about a lot of it right now. And the ROT, don't worry about it. Just give you a random number. Then you can see they can send the file, send the message between each other. Right? In the receiver, as you can see here, we have a message, greetings. We get the message from the client side already. And in here, okay, it doesn't say anything, just say the substrate is running. But now we know the sender can send a message to the receiver. So all we need to do is just maybe just have a look of the sender and receiver and try to expand it and let it have more functions. So after you open the file, you will see like we have already have lots of comments inside the file. Then all you need to do is just read through all the content inside and make sure you can understand how does this program works. But today we are just going to focus on the specification. So we will just have a glance of it, and you can play around with the code by now. But we are not going to focus on this part. And don't worry about if you cannot understand it. You can just spend some time on the Python basics, and we will have more detailed tutorial for the like coding stuff in week 7, week 8, and week 9. Yep, and what's next? Okay, so let's just go back to the specification. So we have already go through how to run the template code and what should we need to have for the assignment. So if you have any question or idea, just let me know. But basically, we have everything inside the specification. So what we need to do is maybe just go through the specification page by page, so you can understand what is this kind of stuff in the code. And I think the next thing I want to mention here is about the headers. segment format because we want to send the packet from the sender side to receiver side. So for every packet, we need to attach some headers to allow them to understand which part of the file is this. So we have already designed a protocol to send a header. All you need to do is just follow the steps. We have like the types and the sequence number and the data, just like the TCP segments. And does anyone struggling with the programming part? And we can talk more about it. Like for this part. Let me go back to my slides. Like in the basic programming skills, like the data type and the flow control and the class and like file input output and logging. So it could be challenging to understand this kind of stuff. Yes, okay, I see. So let me focus more on the like basic programming skills in here. So because it's week 5, it's not very late to start learning this kind of stuff. We still have 5 weeks, right? So if you have time, maybe just start it from today to learn how about maybe just do the tutorial about the Python basics for now. I reckon we have some recommendation in the documents here. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the specification, then you can see for the Python, we have a like tutorial website here. So in here, you can see for the basic file IO, all you need to do is just go through the tutorial for this kind of online tutorial website. So you just type the code with your hand and try to understand it. It will not be very hard. So after you type in this code line by line, then you will know, that's how we use the code like this. And this how to open a file with a Python code. And what is the parameters can we use in here. So it's very detailed stuff. And I reckon you can just use this kind of website and go through all the all the important points I have mentioned in the PowerPoint in here. So I mentioned this like flow control, class, IO, logging. You just go through the website with this kind of content. But if you have time, just go through everything in the website. It will be very helpful. I don't have much practice with Python, so maybe should I watch those 2-hour Python basics? Yes. So if you have time, just go through the Python basics. We are not going to spend a lot of time of watching it. Instead of watching it, we recommend you to just type the code. So it would be helpful if you go to this kind of website and type the code with your hand. Like this kind of code, you just type it in your Python console and see what is the output. It will be very helpful. And we have already mentioned like all the data structures, the numbers, strings, lists, tuples, dictionary will be helpful. And the datetime may be helpful. And because in our template code, we are using the class, so it will be helpful if you know like what is class and how do we use it. So advanced tutorial in the class objects in here. So go through the class, and it will be a bit confusing for the beginner to use the class, but just try to use it. It's not very hard because you just want to pack some function into one class. So in theory, it's not very hard to understand it. But like if you first time encounter the class, you may feel it's a little bit confused. But try to go through all this code in the tutorial website, and it will be helpful to understand the code here. And we only use Python 3 and no other Python. We recommend you to use Python 3, but Python 3 is basically the same as Python 2. They have like small difference in this assignment, but basically it's the same. And if you are learning this one, I recommend you to use Python 3. And so I reckon in the tutorial here, you just go through all the content under the basic tutorial here. So it will be very helpful for our assignment. Go through the code and try to type everything in the examples. And then in the advanced tutorial, you just need to go through the first one, the class and objects. And then if you have time, you can go through the networking one. Networking, we'll talk about the socket, but we have already learned it. So I reckon you don't need to worry too much about this part. But if you have time, you can just go through these two parts in the advanced tutorial. So it will take around like maybe 4 to 5 hours of learning. And it will be very helpful for your assignment before you do it. Because it's just week 5 right now. We still have plenty of time. So if you didn't study yet, I recommend to go through the tutorial at first. And then we come back to the assignment specification. Then we can go through all the content in here. Just try to understand what kind of program are we going to write. It's just basically it's pretty easy. Just a sender and the receiver just need to send and receive the text file. So it will not be very challenging if you can understand how to write a proper UDP socket. We have a question here. When you start the receiver P1 in the terminal in 200. Yeah. So yes, I need to specify the port number in here. Should be the same here. You can see. You can go to the marking policy, and here we have some example how to specify the port number here. So in the receiver, we need to specify the port for receiver and port for sender. And for the sender one, we need to also specify these two. So these two port numbers should be consistent. And we can try to rerun it. Yeah, I think I made a mistake on running the code. So we just run the, so firstly, we need to run the receiver. Run the receiver at first. So we run at this port number A001 and A002. And Okay, it's running right now. And we run the sender. Python 3 sender. And we need to specify the port number here. So it's A02. Okay. Seems the output is still the same, right? Because in here we only send a message from the client to the server. So from the sender to the receiver. And there's no message from the receiver to sender. We can try to implement it by ourselves. And we are going to play with it in week 7. So you can do it with, like, by yourself right now. And we will have a look of the code in week 7. Okay, let's just go back to the specification here. Okay, so just come to here, then you will know like what is the port number to run the file, and what is the file name, and what is the max window. Just go through the content in this specification, then you will know what should we need to do with the configuration. Okay, so just to make it easy, you just come back to here. So we will have a sender and a receiver in here. And they will be able to communicate with each other using the UDP socket. And we have already done 2 threading in your sender side. So the main thread will be to use to send the packets, and the subthread will use to receive the packets, receive the acknowledgement. You can come to here and have a double check. In the receiver side, we have a threading here. Oh, sorry, it should be in the sender side. Yeah, so in the sender side, you can see we have a listen function inside, which is running in the subthread. So just play around with this kind of code, then you will know how to run it and how could they communicate with each other. So the first thing I recommend you to do is, if you already know how to do the programming stuff, basics, then you can find the to-do stuff inside the code. Like you can find some to-do in the comments here. So you just need to add or modify the code inside the template code. You can see here. for the P2P send function, you need to add more codes here. And for the P2P close, you need to add more code here. And you can also go through the main objects in this file at first. So you need to read through what is the class for this one and what is the initialize function. So just go through the comments inside the class, and then you can just scroll down to the bottom. You can see some main logic of the class and how to run the class. And what is the main logic of the class? Like we firstly run the open function and run the send function and run the close function. So you need to like complete these three functions and then try to run it. But don't worry too much about this part right now. Today we are just mainly focused on how to do the assignment. Like what should we need to do for the assignment? So it's not about the code. Yeah, so feel free to ask your question if you have any. And yes, so in here we are going to have some logging stuff. So it will be helpful if you can understand how to use the logging in Python. What would you say the first step of starting the assignment would be? Okay, so for the first step is to try to understand like what should we have in here. So you just come here and scroll down a bit and read through the specification part and try to understand like what do we need to write in the assignment. Then you will have a general idea how this one works. And then you can scroll down a little bit. You can see some file names here. So that's how we run our program, right? The Python 3 sender.py and with some parameters in here. And scroll down a little bit, then you can see how can we run the receiver. So just try to understand how can we run and run the receiver and sender, and what is the parameters means. Try to figure this out at first. So you will have some general idea what kind of program do we need to write. Okay, so that's the first step. And the second step, you need to scroll down to the bottom of the assignment. So we go to the marking policy. So just come to the bottom side. It should be in here. In the marking policy. In the second step, we just have a check this kind of example of the code, right? So just see how will we test your client, your sender and receiver. And you will have some general idea like what kind of function do we need to have in the receiver and sender. And just try to follow this kind of commands and run the codes. And we already have some template code in the assignment center. You can just simply click the assignment here. Then you will find some starter code in Java, Python 2, Python 3. I recommend you to use the Python 3. So you can just download the codes and try to run it with the coding here. So you just try to run the code with this kind of command and see how it goes. And after this, you can try to like modify the code inside this starter code, because in the starter code, we don't have too much thing inside, but we have a templates for you already. So all you need to do is firstly try to read through the template code and try to understand like what is the code, and then try to modify the code. Like you need to add more codes inside the functions to make it work, right? But try to do it right now. Don't worry too much about it. And next week, no, it's 2 weeks later, in week 7, we are going to run a tutorial about how to do this one. So in the next tutorial, we are going to introduce like how to write a very basic function to send a file maybe, or send a message, or send the acknowledgement from the receiver side to the sender side. And we will have a look of how to do the programming in week 7. So for now, you just try to understand what do we need to have in the assignment, and try to play with the template code right now and see if you can do any modification or add more code to make it work. So for the lecture's content, actually it's not pretty related, but it will be helpful if you can understand like what is the difference between TCP and UDP. So it should be the content in week 5, like the flow control, the checksum, and yeah, so but just some general idea of how to do the TCP part. But I think mostly it's more about your programming skills. Yes. So we just come back to the slides. So in here, we just more focusing on the programming skills. In here, we maybe just, if you have time, go through some basic programming like tutorials. So it's available online. Just choose a website that you like and go through the like data type. You need to be very familiar with the like the data type, including the list, dictionary, and tuples. And after this, you may need to have a look of the class. Like how can we use a class in Python or in other programming language? And after this is some very basic flow control. I reckon should not be a problem for you. And after this is the like file input and output. This one is not very hard, I reckon.
Sorry to interrupt you. Actually, I wanna ask. I'm non-CSC background, so how can we like code all those programming?
You want to start with which one?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Actually, these are about coding. Like coding assignments. So I'm from a non-CSC background. So
Yeah. Okay, I got you. So you are from non-CSA. So I reckon you can
mhm,
refer to this one. Just give me a sec. So in the specification, if
mhm,
you come to the section 2.1, then
mhm,
for the non-CSE students, you will have
mhm,
an easier version. So it will be less struggling for you. So
mm,
just contact this email as soon as
mm,
possible, then apply for a non-CSE student version. So basically, still be the quite similar objects like what we
mm,
have shared. So
mhm,
in here, you still need to learn how the basic programming skills works, and
mm,
as well as the socket programming, but you don't need to worry about the multi-threading programming anymore.
mhm.
So just follow the instruction in here. Just
Yep.
send an email. and you will
Yeah.
have a.
I have robotics background. Like my major's in robotics. So am I like, is it applicable for me?
I think so. You can try to send an email anyway.
Yeah. Sure.
I think so. But yeah, because some of the student doesn't have the background on programming, so they may struggling on this one. So and we want to make it fair. So you can try
Mm-hmm.
to apply for this one. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but you still need to spend more time on the Python basics. Otherwise, you
Yep.
will be very struggling with the template coding here. So it will be
Yep.
very hard to read through like what is a class and what is the init function in here. Because
Yep.
like if you have no idea how a class works, then you will have no idea why do we need to have an init function in here and how does it work. So it's slow. You need to spend like a couple hours to understand it. But don't worry too much, and we will go through like from zero. Like we will do a 101 class in week 7, and just try to do your best right now, and get some idea of what do we need to have in the assignment. And this assignment will not be very hard to like to do it.
Thank you.
That's all good. Yeah, we still have around 8 minutes. Do you have any question regarding to the assignment? If we don't, then we can have a look of the assignment schedule. As I mentioned before, we will have to look at this. We will have some help session from week 7 to week 9, and in week 10 we will have some help session as well. So basically, in every week, if you have any question, or if even if you don't have any question, you can still come to the assignment help session, because we are going to introduce some new content like how to get started in week 7 and how to design the application in week 8 and what should be the data structure in week 8. And week 9 will be some how to do the testing and how to do the like styling and do the report in the week 9, and it will be very helpful. So it will be 1 hour per week, and yes, so it actually is 2 hour session. So 1 hour for teaching and another hour for question and answer. So I know like in this week we are focusing on the midterm exam. So maybe most of the student will starting from week 7. And for the midterm exam, I think you can try to search on the GitHub. They may have some useful material as well. So let me try to do it. Okay, so I reckon I will re-upload some midterm exam information in here. So just come to the labs and links in here, further information. I will put some midterm exam preparation material in this link after the tutorial. Okay, so that's it for today. You still have any questions? we don't, then let's meet you at week 7.